Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast, Securing the Hybrid Office, Mitigating Hidden Network Risks. I'm your host, Daniela Fayer, publisher at Defense One, and it's my pleasure to be here with you today and host this conversation. This summer, the Department of Defense Office of Inspector General released an eye-opening report warning services about a new threat to printing, but the concerns it raised are not unique to printing alone. PCs, laptops, and mobile devices get most of the attention during endpoint security discussions, but others, like printers, are just as important. Too many organizations do not properly address printers when discussing security strategies, and that's why we're here to talk about it. But if left unsecured, they present an enticing opportunity for hackers to attack networks and steal valuable information. I'm excited today to be joined by several people who can lend an interesting perspective to this conversation. Army Corps of Engineers Chief Information Officer, DeVarious People, Department of Defense CIO's Senior Technical Advisor, Ryan Macarthur, HP's Chief Technology Officer, Tommy Gardner, as well as their Senior Security Advisor, Pam Dill, to discuss why it's so crucial to include often neglected devices in holistic risk assessments. We'll also explore mitigation efforts at defense agencies and talk about how to enact a comprehensive security plan that includes protection of the network as a whole, on-site or in work from home environments. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. I want to thank our event partner, HP, for sponsoring today's important conversation. Please be sure to check out our event resource center in the bottom right corner of your screen. We encourage you to share your own perspectives and questions via our interactive chat, and we hope you'll contribute to the conversation about how to tackle some of the government's most complicated problems. So to get us started, since we have quite a list of people here, I wanted to just do a little roll call and ask if each of you would introduce yourself, tell our audience a little bit about your journey, your role today, and how you would describe your role at the current organization that you're in, but a little bit about your background so they can have some context. And I'm going to begin with DeVarious.
Yes, good afternoon all, and thank you for the opportunity. So DeVarious People is the Chief Information Officer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where I have the privilege of being the senior IT supervisor and leader for 36,000 civilians in which it is we provide service to as a part of the Department of Defense. However, we do have a unique mission to support also our federal partners in areas such as disaster relief at the state and local areas. And with that being said, we are responsible for providing disaster relief efforts such as hurricane disasters, flood disasters, even COVID-19, and so many other things in which it is that the Corps provides service to. Again, I'm appreciative of the opportunity and definitely looking forward to the discussion. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks so much for being with us. How about Ryan?
Good afternoon, Ms. Fair. So Ryan Macarthur, Senior Technical Advisor to Danielle Metz, the Deputy CIO for Information Enterprise, and the Acting DoD CIO, John Sherman. Overall, for the department, my efforts are to oversee the SaaS adoption of Office 365, how to apply it in the tactical workforce as well, getting after what we call DDIL, denied, disconnected, intermittent, and low bandwidth situations. Also overseeing the unified platform for the department, getting after UC for voice, video, and all security related. So my background is I'm a retired Chief Warrant Officer. Spent some time in the federal sector with USDA, some time with the Marine Corps as a strategy manager, and now with DoD CIO as their Senior Technical Advisor.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you both taking the time. And our friends from HP, Tommy Gardner, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're on mute, Tommy. You got to get off.
Thank you. So I spent 27 years in the Navy, and so I have some background in DoD, 12 years in the Pentagon, which is no badge of honor, but certainly a lot of good experience and understanding acquisition in the budget. I took a course when fresh out of the Naval Academy on microprocessors. Now, this is back in 1976. I would say it's an online course, but there was no online in 76. It was a mail order course. And so they'd send you your assignments, you'd mail back your homework, and the objective was to build an 8-bit microprocessor. So the first thing you had to do is learn how to solder. And when I got to my first submarine, there was a digital equipment PDP-8 on the submarine collecting data for a special program. And the scientists were not allowed to go to sea with us from Johns Hopkins. And so I was trained to run the PDP-8 for the deployment. And that's what got me into IT. And every boat that I was on from then on, all the way up through my command tour on the USS San Juan, we had special equipment that was doing algorithms and processing and data, and then into my acquisition career. So that's what got me to HP, is a number of stops in between, but experience with the microprocessor, with the processing algorithms and data science from early days right out of school.
Pam, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I'm Pam Dill, and I'm the Senior Security Advisor for HP under our Worldwide Analytics and Security Practice. I think what's unique about my team is that we are a vendor agnostic group. That means our focus is endpoint security in general. We look at any connected device, not just an HP device. I grew up in this industry, so it's been over 26 years of doing this. I'm Washington, D.C. based. I spent some years at the Pentagon supporting DOD and the U.S. Army, so I know them very well. You know, I think when I look at my job, I feel like, you know, it's important that I spend time trying to help drive industry standards and really raise awareness to the dangers of overlooking one of your most common endpoints, and that's the printer.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate, again, you all being here, and let's just dive in because we have a lot to talk about. I'm going to start with Devarius and Ryan and ask the two of you if you might share with our audience, what's the biggest IT challenge your agency has faced over the last 12 months? Let's dig a little bit into the, you know, the government agency, Defense Department challenges.
Devarius, you want me to kick off, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can kick off. That's fine.
Okay. So from the department perspective, you know, we've had a, you know, COVID hit, you know, we'll go back 18 months. So 18 months ago, COVID hit, and the department was about a 90% in-person workforce and a 10% remote workforce. So we've had to transition with COVID, with the extension of how things have operated. We've had to flip that. So 90% remote to 10% workforce. Generally, we were very dependent upon VPNs prior to, so we had to learn how to adjust and adapt. In a quick response to that, to get after remote work, we created what was called CVR, Commercial Virtual Remote, which was using Microsoft Teams as a platform for collaboration. I found it to be really successful for the department moving forward from a remote capability, but it was built in the commercial sector. It wasn't built in the DoD's own cloud that we have, that we host in a higher impact level. So the goal was to transition the department to our more secure IL5 level cloud in order to operate. So that effort took about 16 months, but that transition for us, we increased our timeline. Originally, it was going to be a 5-year transition prior to COVID. We did it in about a 16-month timeline for 4 million users. It was quite a feat. But what CVR taught us is how far behind we were in a collaborative sense for the department. It made us recognize some of the things we needed to do from a security perspective, getting after data security, getting after endpoint security, and then also trying to expand the capabilities for the department from a remote work perspective. Inherently, the DoD 365 and DoD environments have always been very closed off. So since then, when we shut down CVR, we made the transition. We've opened up the department. We're actually able to collaborate down to the commercial sector from our environment today. So if I was talking to Tommy outside of this meeting, I could send, if he had a team set up, I could actually shoot him a message on Teams. Him and I could chat, voice, video, We're not at the point where we can share documentation through that type. We're still working through the capabilities of that. But that's been our biggest effort overall. And then coupled with that is getting after the security that's associated with opening up our environment that we for the last 5 years have had closed off from the rest of the world, from the internet. So that's been the biggest, I would say the biggest over the last 18 months, the biggest thing for the department.
Right, Ryan, most of my work in DoD was in the classified sector. What advances have you made in the classified world so that you can operate remotely and yet still hold sensitive data?
So right now, everything we do in the secure space is on-prem. It's very limited in the sense of the lack of capabilities that you have from the commercial providers in the secure space. So like from a cell phone perspective, you don't have push providers in that kind of space. They're not able to push notifications to phones. So it's a little bit limited of a capability because Android, iOS, iOS doesn't even exist in the secure space. Android is the only thing that kind of exists in that space. And even with that, you don't have like an app store where you can go download whatever you need to download. Everything has to get pushed. We actually just recently stood up, we were having a conversation internally in the department about the instantiation of the IL6 cloud. So the SIPR cloud for the department is called USSec. It'll be a shared space for the federal government. Mobility was one of those discussions of exactly how that's going to operate. But that's an air gap cloud. It's not going to be dependent upon the internet. But there are going to be things that we need to tie in from our capabilities to allow for that type of remote work that we've already got put in place. But overall, I think the department has, I'd say the last 18 months has pushed that remote secure, but the user base for that is much smaller. The user base for the department, say for a Microsoft perspective, is about 3.5 million users, which is larger than any organization in the world. But in our secure space, I would say that number is probably around 400 to 500,000 users just period. And then in the mobility space, it's a fraction of that. So there's not as high an emphasis outside of our senior leadership and their capabilities. And I'll let Devarius kind of speak to it some as well from his department's perspective.
Thanks.
Yeah, so good afternoon again. I think, from a Corps of Engineer perspective, I thought it was very important that Ryan kind of went first as lead off, because when you think about the Department of Defense, we as a subcomponent, an Army component, we receive a lot of our higher level guidance from the larger DoD. And then when it's time to fulfill that guidance, we also reach out to our mission partners, whether that's vendor agnostic, One HP, so many others out there that we have partnerships with. And that's kind of more so the hierarchy and the structure as to how we go about doing certain things. But I think from a Corps of Engineers perspective, and even from an Army perspective, one of our challenges are ensuring that we meet the end users where they are. From an Army perspective, we have soldiers on the battlefield. We have different war fighting weapon systems. From an Army Corps of Engineer perspective, we also have engineers, being able to meet district engineers where they are, whether that's on a construction site, whether that's at the management of a levee, lock, dam, or even if that's a first responder trying to set up disaster relief efforts in whatever district, division, or location they're at. And one of the major challenges that we see is ensuring that the data that they always need access to data, but ensuring that data is shareable, ensuring that data is of quality. Also being able to ensure that we can effectively collaborate and communicate when things such as disasters happen. If you take into perspective of not being able to call out families, people in states, local areas, not being able to call out to their families and those type of things, we work with our mission partners to ensure that comms are always up, comms are always ready. When you think about being able to ensure that blue roofs are on top of houses when the storm blows them off, ensuring that users have the ability to go into those systems and be able to put in for requests, as well as the technicians to service in them. So we have to ensure that IT is always operational, ensuring that the users have the most up-to-date technology to be able to effectively and efficiently do their job, whether that's an end-user peripheral device, whether that's an end-user mobility device, whether that's through telephony or whether that's iPads, whatever the case may be, ensuring that those users can do their job, being able to connect to the mission-critical software that they have. Those are all of our challenges, and we're doing that in an expedient manner now more than ever due to the pandemic and some of the challenges that's been presented to us. But I think being able to ensure that they have that access, the end users meeting them where they are so they can be successful, is one of the challenges that we have, even though we're beginning to operate in a normal fashion going through the pandemic.
So those are unique challenges, certainly, but I wonder, Tommy and Pamela, if you all might comment on what you've seen as the biggest challenges for an agency or any customer facing the last 12 months. How much synergy is there here and how much disconnect? Tommy?
Yeah, and I'll start with printers because printers are usually very vulnerable. They typically aren't designed the way a PC is. But if you think about it, in a printer, you've got a CPU, you've got a hard drive, you've got ports, USB ports or connection ports, you've got a Wi-Fi. It's got everything that a PC has. It's not as mobile as a laptop, but it's usually forgotten or ignored until you need something from it. And even then, particularly shared printers have vulnerabilities of what's going around in the office place, particularly secure documents that are sensitive, maybe not classified, that you don't need other people to have. And so that is now changed because people are printing from home. And often they're printing not from a DoD computer, they're printing from their home computer. And that may not have any security in it. It may not even have a password to protect the printer on the network. And if you go to the hackathons, the kids that are tomorrow's hackers are practicing on the first attack is on the printer because they know the vulnerability of a printer is circumspect at best and probably the easiest way into the network. And then they can escalate from there. Now, what I've talked to a lot of CIOs and the various, you can comment on how the Army Corps of Engineers is doing. They're concerned about ransomware. And, you know, the Washington Post had an article last weekend about the number of cities and states and hospitals that have been subject to ransomware and the attacks that are coming in. And why? Because it's a big money maker. You know, the criminal element is making money hand over fist just by encrypting files on another person's machine. And so the CIOs are concerned, we can't train everybody in our agency not to click. And particularly some of these things are pretty well crafted. They look like the website that you wanted to go to a banking website, or maybe to the county website for the sports scheduling. They look exactly like it. And if you get an email that says, hey, your COVID shot date has just been changed, how many people are going to click to find out their new date? You know, probably 90, 100%. I certainly would. I wouldn't think twice. Now, you're supposed to go check where it came from and is it a valid email address? Does it look like the people who are running the COVID shot routine from your county or your city? But the CIOs are worried about that. And what I found is there's solutions out there. HP has a solution, we call it SureClick Enterprise, but that allows you to click and put your results from the click go into a virtual machine and micro virtualization, such that there's no damage to the hardware. The ransomware and the attack can't get to the hard drive to encrypt it. And so you have protective measures. And we run ours on the platform itself. Other companies will run a similar situation in the cloud. Either way, it protects you from having 100% of your employees acting right all the time. And if something goes wrong, click the wrong thing, no damage done. Pam, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just add, like, you know, we're living in that whole age of disruption, and there's just this magnitude, this snowball effect of cyber threat. And I think it was Cyfirma that stated there was over a 600% increase. And 400% of that is just ransomware alone. And I know, Tommy, you talked about ransomware. I think that's the biggest threat that we have today. You know, we see it in the news. A lot of what I see is a lack of implementing proper cyber hygiene, you know, following those best practices and securing common endpoints, because that's what nefarious actors are going to look for. They're going to look for the path of least resistance and get in. You know, what I see a lot because of the pandemic and in the industry is this I want to call it like worker burnout. It's, trying to, move and pivot on a dime and do all of these things that are causing stress among the other issues that we have stress about, like COVID. But, that leads to security misconfigurations. That's user error, insider threat. And I think that's a big issue right now in that disruption.
So I wanted to ask Ryan, because I think Devarius mentioned this, Tommy and Pam both alluded to devices that are being used from home for remote work. So I wanted to ask Ryan if you could discuss the DoD's efforts around mobility, bringing your own approved device, so to speak, collaboration between the agency and industry to secure those things. I'm just curious your perspective, and then Devarius, please chime in.
So we're looking at it from a few different lenses. So the first lens that we tried to do was do internet-based access into the DoD's cloud. So that's inherently, you've had organizations use like proxies or what have you. For our cloud, it's our office productivity. So obviously we're using Microsoft 365 for that capability. The term that's coined for that is called flow-through. So in flow-through, it's internet-based access from outside of what we call the NIPRNet. What we've done inside that is with conditional access policies, block certain things to protect our data. So we're not so much focused on the endpoint. I can't control what that user is going to do on their device at home. So this is specifically gets after this in particular. So to Tommy's point about printing, we don't allow printing from a user's device at home. It's blocked. They're not allowed to download. They're not allowed to print. The only thing that they can do is upload into the environment. So they can upload a document. They can share that document. They can push it out. They can move documents from their email to their collaboration tool to their storage and back, but they cannot put it onto the physical device. That prevents printing, that prevents any stealing of data on an unsecured device. The only thing that somebody could do is potentially, they're obviously if your computer is already hacked, if you already breached, that's what we're trying to prevent is not so much the breach is that we are the security of the data that's associated with it. For like the BYOD piece of that, so that's not so much the BYOD side, that's just mainly allowing a user access into the environment using the tool that they have in front of them, which for now is going to be a computer. They cannot use the mobile phone right now because we require PKI certs. I'm not going to allow a PKI cert to be put on a mobile device, and we don't let CAC cards get hooked up to mobile devices. So right now, a user would only be able to access it from a home computer with a CAC card device and log in. And what we've done to help secure that is we've started to centralize our identity process to bring everybody into a cloud identity source that authenticates into that. For the BYOD side of the house, so we start talking about mobility, which is really what Devarius was talking about with, we have users that are out there for the pandemic or users out there that are for disaster relief. And they're not carrying around their desktop. They're not carrying around their laptop. They're carrying around their mobile phone. So we have a lot of different efforts that are trying to get after that, different, kind of vendor agnostic. We have the Navy that's kind of leading a Microsoft Intune capability, which is a cloud mobile managed device capability. We have the Air Force that's very much focused on using Mobile Iron. And they actually have an almost fully approved BYOD solution. They're in their phase 3 testing right now. They're going to be briefing that out to the DoD CIO, Mr. John Sherman, and the U.S. Cyber Commander, General Nakasone, for a final decision soon. But specifically that BYOD program, they're able to do email, SharePoint, OneDrive, everything on that personal device. But the difference is that it's a BYOD device that's fully managed by the government. So you're basically signing over to say, hey, I want to have this capability on my personal mobile phone, but I can run the risk if I have the wrong data that I have to, I may have to turn my device and have it wiped or something along those lines. But the department at large is really trying to get after a BYOD effort. NGB is doing a virtual mobile platform with Hypori, which is supposed to be very secure. We're testing out the very first SaaS instance, so SaaS, software as a solution, instantiation of that for the Impact Level 5 environment. That test is ongoing this month as well. So we're looking forward to see what the results of that are specifically. But from the mobility side, the department is really leaning forward on the mobility side, getting users the access that they're going to need to that data, but doing it in a secure manner. Like Tommy had previously mentioned with endpoint security, we re-emphasize it again. Zero trust principles, which is like a buzzword for everybody nowadays. Zero trust principles is not so much to be worried about the endpoint. You always, obviously the foundation of the department, and I think every agency that's ever been out there has been to focus on putting network security in place. But the foundation that we're starting to lean towards now is stepping away from focusing on the endpoint and starting to focus on how we can secure that data and keep users secure so they have access, they can use it, but it's not to the point where it puts the department at risk. So I think that kind of covers most of the BYOD efforts, but I know DeVarius is also working on some stuff with the Army, paying attention with the NGB side, and then they're also very closely tied in. None of the services are doing things independently. Everything is being done in a joint manner underneath a very strict governance process, and we're all sharing information, actually weekly, on the efforts that we're doing.
Love to hear about that collaboration, but I do want to hear from the rest of the panelists here. DeVarius, from your perspective, Tommy and Pamela, with this worldwide shift to a more permanent remote work, how are all the defense agencies handling security? And if you can talk a little bit about the obvious security points I think Ryan has touched upon, but less obvious ones as well. I don't know who would like to begin. Perhaps Tommy, and then maybe DeVarius can jump in, and Pam too.
Yeah, happy to jump in here. I really like that Ryan brought up zero trust principles, and it's really a philosophy. It's more than a principle. It is a way to think about products. You'll find a good description in the NIST 800-207 publication. It really gives you the history of zero trust. It was first coined in 2009 by a gentleman from Forrester. HP started working this in 2004 before they even called Zero Trust, with a trusted compute module that is central to not only our printers and our computers, but also to our 3D printers. The same philosophy exists. Security is job one, and you have to think of it in that manner. Most people, when they hear Zero Trust, they think of identity management. It is that multi-factor authentication, but much, much more. And so it gets into software security and software architectural principles. And we apply it primarily to our hardware and the use of hardware and software checking against each other. And so cryptographic identification of components prevents somebody from accessing your machines and adding components or a phone home capability. So on boot that when you boot up, what is in that machine. Tamper proofing is another thing you can do, but those are critical things that help enforce the zero trust principles of the design. This is something you can't just bolt on after design. We're going to design a printer or a computer, and then we'll worry about the zero trust later. It doesn't work that well. It can help, but it won't work as well as putting it into the design up front. So DeVarius, interested in what you have to say.
Yeah, so one of the things that we're continuing to do at the Corps of Engineers, how do we push our users into the digital age? Pushing you into the digital age without carrying a lot of baggage, right? So when you think about it, we put it in context as if we're going to the airport. Now, when you go to the airport, you can only fly with no more than 2 bags to carry on with you. Everything else must be checked in. And that's how we're looking at this digital age as to how we deliver solutions to our end users. So when you think about BYOD, when you think about endpoint devices and so many other things, we're looking to reduce that footprint. And the only way to do that is taking full advantage of a lot of our digital capabilities. So how do we route data and information? We love to be able to print it out in an office setting. A lot of people are used to a lot of printers and data, but ultimately now people are on the run, right? So you print only when needed, but we're trying to force you, hey, how do we reduce our footprint? How do we redefine what a standard desktop looks like? Meaning office phone, monitors and printers and so many other things when you think about remote work and more people working in a distant location. So as Ryan said, we don't necessarily allow the printers to be taken home because there are a lot of other things that's associated with that from different users with different setups, different connections, having technicians. We don't send technicians out to individual houses to be able to fix those. So there are a lot of nuances. So we are really trying to use our digital age methodology and mindset to be able to empower our users. And that means protecting the data because we're looking at workflow management tools and workflow management capabilities to ensure that the data is shared, ensure we can collaborate with the data. So capabilities like leveraging Flow 3 without having to go through the VPN, but you have full access to all of your critical mission applications, whether that's OneDrive, OneNote, SharePoint. That's meeting the end user with our theme, meeting the end user where they are. That means allowing that data to be accessible in a secure manner. And I know we use the term zero trust, right? So many use the term zero trust as from a theory standpoint, but I think within the department, we begin to really operationalize zero trust, especially when you think about CVR. CVR, you have the many different mill depths. So many mill depths are joining, leveraging this one solution to collaborate effectively and efficiently. That means we have people from many different services on one net. So how are we able to ensure that only users that had access to a certain environment could access it? We use some of the same zero trust principles and methodologies to ensure that those things happen. How do we access Flow 3 with the various websites and those type of things? All of that was put through some type of zero trust rigor, and we're continuing to evolve that. But our main goal is, again, allowing data to be accessible in a secure manner, and that's how we're beginning to approach this remote construct or the new now as we continue to evolve.
I was going to say, I think you just hit that on the head. You need to be able to share that data, but you want to be as secure as possible. And, I know Ryan also mentioned you can't control devices if they're at home. And you said you can't bring support to a home environment, but wouldn't it be great if you could print as securely at home as you did in the office? If you had either persistent VPNs built into a device or embedded standard VPNs or a full cloud-based zero trust within a device itself that you can secure, that you can have eyes to from an IT perspective. Because the goal is also, being able to share that with those end users. They have to be able to ensure that they're secure, but you want it easy to use, easy to deploy, and manage. And that's something that HP is looking at doing today. We recently announced our Flex Worker program and how we can help provide that level of security and have best-in-class type security features on printers. And I think those are so overlooked because, Tommy mentioned it, when you talked about components and having hard drives and operating systems and firmware. But, I look at it, even, BIOS protection, what about malware, consistent anomalies being hit on a device. Devices today, we did that in our firmware. It was an enhancement. It wasn't where you had to go buy a new product. You could actually just update your firmware and have certain what we call the big four security features, and where we have that runtime intrusion protection, where you can, if an anomaly happens, the device is going to reboot and have that ability of cyber resilience. And that's most important, right? Because you want to be able to stay up and running, especially, like Army Corps, where you said, you have mission critical. You have to be out there. You have to be in satellite areas. You have to keep the communication open.
So I'm really enjoying this group. You're so knowledgeable that a lot of my questions about security and best practices, you've all sort of covered this. So I would like to jump, if you don't mind, to discuss some personnel and workforce implications. So my thought is, does the push for a more secure ecosystem require new hiring, new training, a different team organization? Or is this simply a matter of adding additional responsibilities for the appropriate teams that are already working in this challenge? And I'd love to hear from all of you. So Ryan, it's been a while. How about we begin with you?
So, I think that, you start to look at the workforce, it's definitely a unique kind of situation. From the DoD perspective, when I say that, I'm looking at it from the enterprise side. Devarius is very much focused from an agency perspective. He has all of those components as well. So from an enterprise perspective, we're constantly looking at it and exactly how we're supposed to get after, training from an enterprise perspective, ensuring that our organizations, our agencies are empowered to operate and feel like they have the ability to make those decisions and put them in place, while also providing the boundaries left and right. I think there's a heavy focus on our cyber command brethren, ensuring that they have the people that they need, having the right personnel that are monitoring the network, monitoring what's going on, ensuring our CSSPs are operating the way that they need to. In the impact level 5 or our unclassified space, which is where Devarius and I operate every day. Our CSSPs are very vital there. We have 3 different CSSPs that we consistently are working with inside that space. So they're constantly monitoring what's going on. So it's ensuring that they know what they're looking at, how they're looking at it, and then also ensuring that they are empowered to use the tools that they feel are best to keep that capability, fruitful. We've deployed a lot of different types of SIEMs. We've deployed a lot of different kind of capabilities to monitor the network, monitor the data that the users are doing, and then also ensuring that they feel empowered enough to use those tools the way they need to be used.
Darius, can you follow up there from your perspective?
Yes, ma'am. So just to take a slightly different perspective, to bring it from an enterprise level now down to the actual component level, we have begun to put a lot of our training focus into our workforce, the workforce training of the professional themselves. So the Army has an initiative now, and it's called Quantum Leap. And what the Quantum Leap initiative is set to prepare and fully posture a workforce to be prepared in 2028, really forward leaning. So some of the focus and things we're looking at is how to ensure you get the true on-the-job training, because a lot of people look at training as a certification. Well, sometimes training isn't necessarily receiving a certification, but it's also on-the-job training, being trained as you go. So we're beginning to look at how do we ensure our professionals have the right training, the right skill sets to be able to evolve, since the workforce is evolving, technology is evolving, and being that we're not all in the same physical location, how do we ensure that they have the access to everything it is that they need, and how do we change the way we think about the various aspects of training? We've even looked at training from how we onboard users, right? Onboarding is critical because we're so used to now the human element as people, but now we're forced to leverage the whether that's the Zoom, Microsoft Teams, whatever collaboration tool. So that doesn't always mean a physical human interaction, but it means that virtual interaction. So ensuring that our end users can effectively learn the job that they have in front of them or that they've been hired to do, but to have full resources such as online resources to clearly walk them through these type of things. So we begin to put a heavy emphasis on training our end users, ensuring that they are properly postured to be that efficient and effective 2028 workforce that we need to be successful in the Army through leveraging a lot of our DoD resources going forward.
And it's fair to tack on to what Devarius was saying. I mean, the thing for everyone to understand, where, for at least from the department perspective, generally we don't move fast on certain things, just because we're a large organization. You can't be 4 million people deep and move really quickly. COVID changed a lot for the department. I mean, it was a pretty trying time for everybody in every organization, but it made us relook and rethink of exactly how we were going to do things. And Devarius mentioned it, onboarding, hiring somebody during the middle of the pandemic, not being in the office, not being there to do, walk them through the building, not being able to do those things. Like COVID was a leap pad for the department to move forward exponentially. Like I said, we changed our migration timeline from a 5-year timeline to a 16-month timeline. It really did springboard us forward on a lot of different initiatives, and it put a lot of power from the congressional side, from the military leader side, and then also from from what Devarius is talking about with some of our DAFAs, some of our other agencies, like putting that focus into the IT effort and allowing us to move forward to have those capabilities.
One of the things you mentioned, workforce. One of the things in the workforce, particularly in DoD or in the government, is the pay. Is industry like HP or the IT industry we will find the talent we need and we will pay them market rates. DOD has a hard time doing that, but they're making progress. I was a nuclear trained engineer in the Navy, and Admiral Rickover was critical to make sure we got paid market rates, and we had a bonus at the end of every year. If you signed up for 5 years, you got even a bigger bonus. And we're moving that way for IT personnel in the government. I think that's a great step forward. That's a great way to go, is pay them what they're worth. And then you'll have the quality you need and the people you need, you can retain and have that longevity. The other part of training, I think you've got to look at community colleges and try to revision what the community colleges are doing to 2 areas. One is cybersecurity, software, and advanced software development. The second area is 3D manufacturing, the new tools to do manufacturing, and to do it in a safe and secure, cyber secure methodology. And if we can get our community college headed that way, then we can all of a sudden have the number of people trained and have a recurring flow of people, and even people that can come from government that are my generation and go back through a community college for a 6-month stint and pick up these skills locally where they are. And another part of education is the MOOCs, massive online open courses. And I've benefited from that in my field of data science, to stay up with a field that is moving very rapidly. Being able to go online and take courses from an expert while you're sitting in your basement, at your office, at any time that's convenient for you, is a great way to educate the federal and industry workforce. And we're trying to take advantage of that at HP and make sure the people that want to learn quantum information science or cybersecurity or sustainability, that they have access to those courses. And most of them are free. So you're not even paying for them. You're just paying for the time.
So I just want to tack on to what Tommy was just saying. So, from a federal workforce perspective, I mean, you'll find a lot of people, they come to federal workforce to give back. One of a big person of that was Dana Deasy. So Dana Deasy came from industry, was retiring, came into 2 years as a CIO. Like you retired and be like, hey, I'm going to go work as a CIO for the DoD. And then he's retired now. A lot of people that come to federal workforce to give back to the federal community, back to the government, back to the civilian workforce. And we have that rotation in and out. There's several people who've gone from government to commercial, back to government, and so on, to keep that information flow going in. And we have a lot of organizations. Army is one of them that is very much focused on development, kind of gets after what the Darius was talking about. One of my friends, like I said, I'm a recently retired warrant officer. He's actually one of the first warrants to go through the software development program that the Army's put in place. It's a 3-year program that the Army's working through to do software development. Our office inside DoD CIO, we actually are the lead for software development for the entire department from an enterprise perspective. So there's a lot of initiatives inside the DoD that I think empower our users from an education perspective, from an advancement perspective. I mean, we have so many opportunities. I mean, I myself have an opportunity to potentially go to an executive leader course at Harvard to get after my executive stuff. There's a lot of different things that are being put in place from the department, because we recognize that we need to try to keep up from a commercial perspective. And we have a lot of strong talent that want to learn how to have that. And now that we're providing them the tools to do so, you're seeing a large advancement internally to the department, as opposed to consistently having to reach out to the commercial sector to bring that in, which is a great tool to have, because it kind of removes that dependency as well.
Pam, I don't want to forget you. I'd love to hear how you feel this, education and training can impact long-term goals. Yeah. And then just specifically, even, the endpoint devices that we're talking about, how can training, well,
I think it's great that I've heard about, this workforce training of this quantum leap kind of program that you're instilling. it's always so important. And I think one of the things we've learned because of this, we'll call it this push to the home of recent, was that we saw this a full shift. You know, it's always about the people, and shifting that mindset from work in the office to work anywhere, and being able to have that flexibility. You know, Tommy, I know you talked about salaries, but there's also that feeling that there's like a large percentage of people that, hey, I want to work sometime at home and sometimes in the office. That hybrid mentality is great. I think it's helping. You know, just really, it's a positive step. And I think that in that respect, you can also find other talent as well. So, you know, in a printer world, we might look at it and call it right sizing, finding the right device, you know, for the right output. And it's the same with, you know, from an end user state, you know, having the highly experienced people maybe no longer doing some of those other mundane tasks that they don't need to do, and have more tools and automation that can handle those. So having that right training in place is important. And it sounds like you're on those steps. So that's great.
So we're coming to the close of our time here, and I just want to hear from everybody a little bit of, like, follow on to what Pam has said. You know, what are your thoughts on what the future looks like for security around defense agency endpoint devices and the whole, you know, new environment that may or may not that may stay the course here. So Pam, if you have anything else to add, otherwise I'll turn to Tommy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would just say, I really think that this security perimeter has changed. I think there is no more a perimeter. There's no edge. You know, we anticipate this hybrid workforce to continue, you know, for forever. And whether that's multi-cloud or BYOD, I mean, the key is really having the right controls in place. So pushing out controls, you know, to where the data is. And I know, Ryan, you mentioned that it's really around data, but it's around the focus of the people, securing them. And I think, you know, your end users can be your security warriors. So you have to arm and educate them so that they can help protect that data. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think the future is so bright that we're all going to have to wear shades. Now, that may sound a little like ZZ Top, but I'm telling you, there is great things coming down the pike in research. We invest about $3 billion a year in research. Half of that, $1.5 billion, is focused in cybersecurity. And why? I mean, we're a $60 billion company, so we ought to be investing that much. But why focus that much in cyber? The answer is because the adversaries investing much, much more. We have to do that to keep up with the tactics and techniques that the bad guys are using right now, both the criminal actors and the nation states. So if we don't, we're going to be left behind and our business model will just crumble. So the thing that I'm very excited about is quantum information science. You know, DeVarius talked about quantum leap. I think that's a curious term because quantum's at nanoscale. I think we want to leap much more than nanoscale. We want to leap by yards and miles. But the quantum information science is an ability to build the next generation internet, and to build it with security is the main design criteria of a secure internet from the very beginning, from the architectural structure, using things such as photon and quantum key distribution, and being able to put out single photons and use those as bits based on polarity of the photon. I'm very excited about this. There was some great testing at University of Chicago last year by Department of Energy. And my hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee is looking at this right now to be known not as just the gig city of a gigabit internet throughout the region, but also as the first quantum internet. And I'm really hoping they're successful doing that.
That's exciting. DeVarius.
Yeah, so from my perspective, again, I'll put a slightly different twist to it. This is what will continue to keep me up at night, right? And the reason why I say that is because even with the promise that's on the horizon, there is a fight that we're in day to day. And it's not a fight to take lightly, right? And I'm going to say from an Army Corps of Engineer perspective, as we work closely with the DoD, the challenge that we have is how do we successfully operate and defend, as well as finding a clear balance between mission and cyber. And that's where the struggle comes into play, because those two terms don't always go together. And you can put as much research dollars into the cyber culture and those other type of things, but operationally being able to effectively operate with the notion of cybersecurity in the back of the mind, it's hard to move the mission forward, because a lot of times cybersecurity tools don't always align with what the mission needs right now, right? So being able to ensure that we can secure these endpoints, ensure that we can operate in an efficient and effective manner, it is a huge challenge. And that's for not just IT, but that's also OT when you think about the operational technology pieces as well. So we have so many things that we're beginning to look at, and that's our challenge.
Noble. Ryan, would you like to close it up for us as we started our conversation?
Oh yeah, so thanks for hosting today though, by the way, as well. No, so I would say, tack on to what Devarius is saying, and also Tommy, I think overall from the department perspective, we've definitely changed the way in how we view security for the Department of Defense. I think that there's been a lot of lessons learned as we've all moved into the cloud. There was, I won't bring them up, but we've had previous incidents in recent past, and what you saw in those incidents, it wasn't just the DoD reacting, it wasn't just commercial sector reacting, it was the two of them working closely together to react together because of that nation state problem, or because of those hacker problems, because HP can't do it on its own, DoD can't do it on its own, the rest of the commercial world can't do it on its own. So I think overall, the way that the department stays successful is working directly with our commercial partners, making sure that we're sharing information back and forth, that in this day and age, that there can't be, hey, this is my fiefdom, kind of stay out of it. We've learned from that lesson inside the DoD. I think overall, like I said, from what we pushed from a collaborative and secure perspective is to kind of open ourselves up so that way we can have that collaboration. And then also start to really focus in on ensuring that our users understand what it is that they're doing when they're working from home. We've put a lot of policies in place. We've worked a lot of standardization across the department, so that way USACE isn't less protected than the Army is protected, or the Army isn't less protected than the Navy's protected, while also kind of making sure that we stay away from being vendor centric, and we're very vendor agnostic. We're able to work in multiple different initiatives, and that they're able to work together. So I would say that's the biggest thing that the department continues to work towards moving forward, with an end goal of getting smarter and continuing to work hard.
Well, it has been my great pleasure to speak with you all today. I want to thank you all for the work you're doing, the very, very important work around this topic. That's all the time we have for today. Devarius, Pamela, Ryan, and Tommy, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you to our audience for tuning in to this special program, Securing the Hybrid Office and Mitigating Hidden Network Risks. If you missed part of the show or want to share it with another workforce security pro, the on-demand program will be available shortly. I'm Daniela Fayer. See you next time. Thanks so much.
Let's regroup on Monday and have the rest of the team join us later on in the week when we have things buttoned up.
Working from home has its pros, but also has its cons. One being the threat of cyber attack on machines like that beauty over there. If Alice had an HP printer with Wolf Enterprise security, it would have stopped me in my tracks. Printers like these make for the perfect hiding place on the network. All I have to do is wait here until Alice points me to my next target.
Got it. I'll get it out to the team right now.
That's right. Come to Papa. Oh, look, it's Alice from HR. Nothing suspicious there. Just like everyone else who got her email. Mr. CTO just fell for my Alice impersonation. A guy like me, given the keys to the kingdom, what's the worst that could happen?
Little boxes on the hillside, little boxes made of ticky-tacky, little boxes on the hillside, little boxes all the same.